Good afternoon and welcome to MIX. Thank you for coming. I'm Brad Abrams. I'm the Group Program Manager for the .NET Framework team. We're going to be talking about creating and delivering amazing web user experiences. I had a chance to talk to some attendees over in the halls and at lunch, and somebody mentioned that they were expecting this talk to be how to build a YouTube site. And while we're going to talk about a lot of principles for building web-centric applications, what I'm not going to cover is how to sell your site to Google for $1.75 billion. So if you're here to kind of learn about how to sell your site, that's not going to be covered. So. But we are going to talk about some very cool stuff around how to build a video-centric website. We're going to cover some principles on that. First, though, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the trends that we're seeing on the web today. Frankly, I think I have the easiest job at MIX here. I don't think it takes much to convince you as web professionals that video on the web is growing at substantial rates and is super important to all of our businesses. One company I saw said that there's already about 1.1 billion users on the internet today. 1.1 billion users. And that number has tripled since the year 2000. So there's a lot of people and it's growing at a very fast rate. And with broadband penetration at 450 million users, we're seeing more people than ever, not only on the web, but spending more time on the web, creating, critiquing, and putting their own content up on the web and critiquing other people's content. And that rise in both web pages and rich media is fueling an explosive growth of advertising revenue moving to the web. We expect to see in the next couple of years around $3 billion in incremental ad revenue move to video on the web. That's $3 billion kind of waiting for the right sites to come take it. And what we're seeing is that more than ever, it's important that companies have rich, integrated experiences on the web with fresh content that not only attracts users, but also retains them over time. And we're seeing it's very common to do that with user-created content. So this is how we're going to structure the next hour and 15 minutes. First, I'm going to talk about compelling web user experiences. I'm really going to take it from an experiences first point of view, what's the experiences you want to enable, and then talk about how you go enable those with our platform. And then I'm going to bring up a coworker of mine who's going to talk about delivering rich media without going broke. If today you're streaming media on the web, you know that it can be expensive. It can hit your bottom line. And we're going to talk about a set of ways to make that easier. And then I'll come back up and I'll talk a little bit about monetization. How can you make money with the ad content on the web and show you some interesting ideas about that. And then finally, we're going to end the time with some very cool demos around how to do user-generated content. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is building compelling web user experiences. User experiences are super important on the web. They help you attract new users to your site. They help retain those users. They keep the users on the site for longer and make people have an emotional connection with your website. If you think about what Starbucks sells, do they sell coffee? Do you go into Starbucks and pay $4 for coffee? Or do you pay $4 for some experience? What's the experience that Starbucks offers? I think they've kind of done a really good job in my mind of packaging up the third place experience. So you have work and you have home, and then there's a third place. And Starbucks has found a niche within there, and they've created an experience. When you go into a Starbucks restaurant, you know you're in a different kind of place, and they're selling that experience. When you think about the solutions you're building with your websites, are you delivering a website or are you delivering an experience? So what we're going to talk about is some principles for experience. So I have two sets of principles. The first set is around creating rich and expressive websites. And I have three principles around rich and expressiveness. The first one I want to talk about is looks great. Your websites, in order to connect at an emotional level with your audience, the website has to look great and feel great to users. And by that, I don't just mean it uses primary colors and big fonts. What I mean is you actually put some thought into the aesthetics of the site. And when I think about my dream stereo system, it's not just that it has a Dolby surround sound and a very large sweet spot that delivers perfect music, but it's also the aesthetics. It's the placement of the speakers. It's their shape. It's their color, the texture, the look and feel of those. That's what gives me an emotional connection with this dream speaker system. So let's think about how you can do that with your websites. We've already talked a little bit about Expression. It's our suite of tools that are really targeted at the creative professional. So to give you a better idea about that, I'm going to flip over and do a demo here. So I'm going to start by bringing up Expression Media. You saw a little bit of this in the keynote, and I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail. So just to give you an idea, the music is there. So you can come in and you can add these points here. And these are reference points in the video. So we can do this one around the board. And I can set up a few of these. And I won't bore you and do them all. And then I can go into the output, and I can go ahead and choose a frame to give me a thumbnail of this. In my website, we're going to build a video-centric website. I'm going to need a thumbnail. And I want Expression Media Encoder to go ahead and pick the best thumbnail to use for that, and I can tell it the size of it. And then I can actually come in here and pick a template, whatever template I want to. You saw a little bit of this in the keynote. I'm going to pick this one. And then all I have to do is encode. And that's going to stick those chapter points in there. It's going to stick thumbnails. Julia Child style, I happen to already have one done. I just wanted to show you this is the output directory that Expression gives you when it's done. And notice it's not just the WMV file you get out of there. It's also a set of a thumbnail and a set of chapter points within there. So let's just look at the video experience that we created there. And what Expression did is it actually created the full web experience for me. So I get the chapter points we talked about. So those chapter points I selected are right here, and they already kind of encoded right into the media. And the rest of this is all done in, the whole skin is done in XAML, so I can come in and customize that and put that in my site the way I want it. But what else is cool is all the other stuff that's in here. The directory also gives you a web config file. It gives you this media definition file and an ASPX file. And what that does is if you're an ASP.NET developer, it gives you all you need to be able to stick this into an ASP.NET site. So say you had an existing site or whatnot and you wanted to use this video in there, you have Expression gives you all the building blocks. So I happen to have a video site already. So I'll pull that up, and we'll come in here and add this new ASP Media Control. And the ASP Media Control is part of the ASP.NET Futures release that we just released at the show today. And what it does is it packages up the access to Silverlight, so it makes use of Silverlight on the client. But then on the server, if you notice what I'm doing here, I'm actually data binding this. I have all the media that we're using. I have all of that in a database, and I'm just using ASP.NET data binding. So if you're already familiar with ASP.NET, then you already know how to use this ASP Media Control. And it's available for you to use. It works on .NET Framework. It works on Visual Studio 2005 as well as in Orcus, which is where I'm doing this demo today. So if I put this in here and I picked a different skin here. I picked the Expression skin. Then I can come in here and start this up. And I'll give you a brief tour of the site that we'll start with. And throughout the course of this talk, I'm going to build up the site and make it incrementally better with each principle we talk about. So the first thing I did was that watch page. So we come in here to this watch page, and you can see there it has the Expression skin on it that we chose, and it was trivial to go do that. All I did was I have these items in a database, and I'm just data binding to the item in the database. So it was very trivial. But just to give you an idea of the site, I can come in. I have paging in here. So I can page through the items. I can come in here and I can search for something like dog. And it goes back out to the server. Wow, that button's not there. Good. And then I also have this playlist that I can come in and add items to the playlist. Excellent. Yep, so I can add items to the playlist, and I can flip over and see the one that's playing now. So what we'll do through the course of the talk is come in and add you have probably noticed some things about the site that could be a little bit better, and as we go through the talk, we'll add those things to the site. So let's flip over back to the slides and talk about the next principle. So we just talked about looks great and how it's important that your websites connect emotionally with users. The next principle we want to talk about is uninterrupted flow. Let me ask you a question. If you're going to heat a glass of water, if you have a cup of water to heat, and you want to heat that for, is it faster to heat it for 1 minute and 10 seconds or 1 minute and 11 seconds? You're going to heat some water in a microwave. Should you do that? Which one is faster, heating it for 1 minute and 10 seconds or 1 minute and 11 seconds? Well, certainly the analytical ones in here, you guys wearing the blue wristbands, the developer ones, you're probably going, look, that's pretty crazy. Of course it's faster to heat it for 1 minute and 10 seconds than 1 minute and 11 seconds. Actually, if you think about the entire user process, what is the process involved in heating a cup of water? You put it in the microwave, and then you select the time. And we've actually done studies that show if you hit a minute and 11 seconds, that's just hitting the 1 3 times. And that's much quicker than hitting the one, and then going and finding the 0 key and hitting that. So honestly, who has ever done that? You've heated something a little longer than you absolutely needed to because, frankly, it was just quicker to do it that way. I know my wife gets on me because I always heat things for increments of 1 minute because we have the kind of quick minute button on there. What that's about, understanding that principle, is what understanding this uninterrupted flow. And you want to have that uninterrupted flow on the sites that you create. So the first site I noticed this thing on is the Soapbox site. And what you're able to do is you're able to tab through the tabs on there, look at users' comments, add your own comments, all while you're watching a video. So they offer this uninterrupted flow on this site. So how do we go and do that? Well, let's flip back to the demo, and I'll show you. So I want to come in here to the search control and add the up. So what I'm going to use is Update Panel. And Update Panel ships as part of the ASP.NET Ajax release that we did very beginning of this year. So it's a kind of RTM thing that's ready to go. And I'll just come in here and add an Update Panel. And what Update Panel does is it takes a region of your page and marks that off and says, this region of the page, take any post back from that region, and instead of doing a post back to the server, do it as a call over XML HTTP. And what that does is it goes back up to the server, runs the full page lifecycle, and then comes back and updates just that section of the page. So you're only changing one section at a time. So I'll go ahead and take basically this whole page, this whole user control we have in here, and wrap that in a content template, and then I'll close my Update Panel. So now if I come back to this site, then I think you'll see some of the thing as we were watching it before, there was some kind of jarring flow there. So let me just queue up a video to watch here. I'll go ahead and add this one to the playlist. And then as we page through these results, you can see I'm paging through those results without any jarring at all. That video keeps playing. As we looked at it before, the whole page was refreshing each time. So what this allows you to do is interact with the site in a rich way, go search for new videos and whatnot without breaking the flow that's on the site. This is the principle we call uninterrupted flow. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is immediate user response. How many times have you been on a website and you filled in your order, yeah, I want 12 widgets or whatnot, and you click submit, and the submit button goes down and comes back up, and nothing changes about the page? Did your internet connection go down? Did the web request go out? Did you get a result back? What's happening there? Now, you might know as a web professional that sometimes there's lag on the internet, sometimes there is server load happening, there's lots of things that can go on. But as if we focus on a user-centric design, then what we want to do is provide some immediate response to the user that yes, we got that request, and yes, something is happening with that. And I think of a couple of places, I think about rich media sites where I see that happening. This video blog site, Dailymotion, whenever you tab through and look at user comments and the related videos, I think I might have hit the site when it was experiencing a lot of load, but it took a while for that data to come in. But it didn't just give me a white screen. It actually gave me some indication, this animated GIF that was circling around that was telling me, yeah, that data is coming back in. We also see the same thing come up when you're queuing videos up. Lots of times you need to buffer the video, and you need to get the first couple of seconds going before you start playing. And it's nice when there's some progress indicator indicating that that's happening. So let's switch back to the demo, and we'll talk about how to go do that with ASP.NET and Silverlight. So what I want to do here, we have another, the first thing I want to do actually is come in and add some indication, that some server delay. So if you see one of these sleep for 2 seconds code, I recommend you remove that from your site. But just to give you an idea that this is a realistic demo and things are really happening, I'll go ahead and put that in there. And then I'll come back over here. And what I'm going to do is use another control out of the ASP.NET AJAX release that we did at the very beginning of this year. So that's available for you to use right now. And what I'm doing here is I'm using an update progress control. And what update progress does is it has an associated update panel. So it's going to associate itself with that update panel that we just put on a few minutes ago. And it's going to notice when a request over XML HTTP goes out. And when that goes out, it'll show the update progress. It'll show the content, the progress template. And then when the request comes back, it'll take it down. So it handles all the logic to understand when to display and when not to. And that works across all the browsers, Safari, Firefox, IE. And then in that progress template, I'm just doing some very simple ASP.NET code. And the real magic is this animated GIF that the designer I work with helped me create. So we'll go back to the site, hit refresh there. Now we're experiencing a little bit of load because now our server is under high strength, so it's a popular site. But now you see, as I page through the results, I get that immediate response to the user. So I know something's happening. Even though I'm not getting something immediately, I know you're getting that request. That's this principle of immediate user response. Okay, so what I just showed was this update progress. Okay, so we just talked about compelling user experiences that are rich and expressive. We talked about making your site look great, making it have a great user-centric flow, and having an immediate user response. So now the next three I want to talk about, I have 3 more principles, and they're around making your site engaging and easy to use. This is about retaining people on your site and keeping them coming back for more and more over time. So the first one to talk about is this principle of suggest. And when I think about this principle, I think about my favorite restaurant. In particular, one of the waiters at my favorite restaurant, it's kind of a high-end restaurant in Seattle. And when we go in there, he recommends wine for us. And you know, he takes into account the meal that we're ordering. We discuss what dish we're having. We discuss the specials, kind of what is available in stock. The waiter also knows what other people like. because the waiter works there all the time. And I sort of like to think the waiter might remember what I like. I don't know if that's true or not. But, and the waiter takes all that into account and recommends to me a wine to choose. And what that does is it increases my confidence as a consumer to go ahead and make that purchase. And it makes me have more of an emotional connection with that restaurant. And it makes me want to come back again and again because of the power of that suggestion that's there. So if you think about your websites, the websites you're building, what data do you have? What mechanisms do you have at your disposal to suggest options to users? What are in your bag of tricks? And could you use things like what other users liked, what this user has done in the past, data from your product catalog or from your available set of videos? Can you wrap that data up in a way that's going to connect at an emotional level with users and make them want to come back to your site again and again? I think a great, so one example of that kind of popularizing it, our friends down in Silicon Valley, they do this small search engine you might have heard of. They have a suggest feature that you type in a search query and they give you search queries that other people have typed and help you suggest one. So this is one I did on Silverlight a little while ago. It would be interesting to try it again now and see if we're getting any different results. Another great example I think of when I think of this suggest concept is Netflix. I don't know about you, but every time I go to Netflix, I find another set of movies that I really want to see. They use the movies that I have rated in the past and that other people have watched and liked as well. And they use that to come up with a couple of suggestions for me. And several times, 9 times out of 10, there's one of those movies there that I really like, and I say, yeah, add that to my queue. And consequently, my Netflix queue is over 100 long. Now, with a Netflix queue of 100, am I likely to cancel my Netflix account anytime soon? That's pretty good business for Netflix, isn't it? Because they've used the data they have to suggest more alternatives. And that makes it a much stickier presence on the web. So let's flip back over to the demo and look at how you can, with the Microsoft Web technologies, go ahead and use that suggest functionality. So the first thing I'm going to go do is come in here and add a watermark control. Because one thing I've found is that suggesting can sometimes be static. It's like, just give people an idea of how to fill out this form. And having a watermark in the text box that indicating what people should put in there, our usability studies have found that that's a really powerful way to indicate to people what should be there. So this is a control out of the Ajax Control Toolkit, which, again, we shipped earlier this year. And the Control Toolkit has 30 or 40 some controls. It's an open source project that's run by Microsoft. Microsoft has full-time employees on it. But we also have third parties working on it. And we just build controls that people are going to use. And you can go and download those, get the source code for them, include them with your projects as you see fit. So this is a cool one that I like, and you can see how it works. It's an extender that attaches itself to that search text box. And what it does is it puts the watermark text. I'll type in search term here, and it puts that watermark text right in that text box. And it handles all the logic of making that text gray and kind of faded out in the background and disappear when somebody starts typing and reappear after they're done if they don't edit there. And it works on every web browser that's out there. I've seen this implemented on several sites, and I've seen it broken. It's a somewhat simple concept, but it's tricky to get right. So it's great that we have that control there. And the other suggest concept to show is the autocomplete extender. It, again, is part of that Ajax Control Toolkit. And the way it works is it also attaches itself to that search text box, and it gets the text that's typed in there. And as it's typed, it actually, over XML HTTP, so in the background, it passes that text up to the server and calls a web service. And that web service processes the text and sees if there's any items in the database that match that query. If they are, it returns them, and then the autocomplete extender populates them as options on the text box. So let's go ahead and look at that implementation of get completion list. So I'll flip over here to app code, and look at the search autocomplete guy. And you can implement this service in WCF or in ASPX. And I'm sure it's coming up any second now. So you have Visual Studio Orcus in your CDs. It's in beta. It's we have a couple of performance fixes. Yeah, okay, here we go. The way this service works is a get completion list. It passes the prefix and the number of characters. And then what I do is I have this database of all the video that people have uploaded to the site. And I do a very simple link query to go through and see if any of the titles are in there. And if they are, then I go ahead and return that title. So let's take a look at how that looks on our site. So refresh that site. So I will mention I'm using Visual Studio Orcus, and everything I'm doing in the demo can be done with the bits that you have. And in addition, everything can be done with the Express version. So we have an absolutely free version of Visual Studio that you can go get, and everything works there. So the first thing you'll notice is I have that little search term text, and it works just as you would expect. And I can come in here and I can type foo in there and then delete it, and that does the exact right thing. And then I can come in here, and if I type B, then it goes out and calls that web service and returns the text. Let's try this one more time. I think I messed it up when So now I can come in here. Why didn't it work? Honestly, this is the simplest part of the demo. Default property of the toolkit control? Yeah, it's one though. I didn't save! Who said didn't save? That man gets a free drink tonight if it works. So now what you can do is you just hit B, and there you go. It's hey! So it auto-completes those. So basically what that does is it takes the items out of the database and auto-completes those for you. Whew. Okay. Now, where were we over here? Okay. Right. So here I just wanted to kind of just put it all on one screen, the way it works. At the top there, you have the ASP AJAX autocomplete extender. And then you just do a web method that does the completion list, and that completes that up. And that's as part of this ASP.NET AJAX release that we've done. So that's the principle of suggest. Use the power of the data that you have at your disposal as a website vendor and see if you can suggest alternatives to users so that they have a stickier presence and they feel more emotionally connected to your sites. The next principle I want to talk about is preserve. Users invest a lot in your site. They come to your site and they configure it. They set up preferences. In the case of my site, they come and add items to the playlist. And they've even if they've just navigated around the site, they've invested time in that site. And I think as website vendors, we need to preserve that data. We need to help make sure that users have a great experience by not forgetting anything. So I think when I think of a great example of that, Microsoft just moved to a new review model for how we review employees for compensation and whatnot. And as a manager at Microsoft, I had to watch these 6 videos on essentially how to give a review feedback and kind of the details of the new model. And they were all, it was a computer-based training system, so I had to watch these modules. And a friend of mine said there was something funny in modules 2 and 5, so I went ahead and watched those first and got those out of the way. And then I got called away to a meeting or whatever, and I didn't get back to this required training until later that night from home. So I go back to the site, and the site didn't know. It didn't remember that I had already watched 2 and 5. So I was quite upset that I had to start the video while I was doing email again. So what what I would have really liked to see is that as I complete each video, as I've watched that, it goes ahead and remembers it and checks it off. Yes, Brad, we know you've watched that, and you have these other 3 that you need to go watch. That's what we mean by preserving user preferences. So let's take a look at how to go do that in the site. So there's a couple of things to think about with preserving user preferences. The first one I want to talk about is something that I think has been an issue in the Ajax community a lot and the RIA community, is what to do with the back button. How do you handle back button in the cases where these aren't documents anymore, they're actually applications? So we think as an application, you should have control of the entire browser frame, including the back button state. So what we've done, again, is part of the ASP Ajax, what's it called? ASP Ajax Futures release, we've added a new control called the ASP History Control. And what that does is essentially gives you a way to cross-browser, cross-OS, manage the state of the back button. Now, if you want the geeky details, we use hidden iframes under the covers to navigate that, but you don't need to really understand that at all. What you do is you drop the history control on there, and then the next thing I need to do is I need to come over here to my update panel and make a couple of modifications, because whenever my history changes, I need to make sure I update the update panel. So what I've done is added a trigger to the update panel to make sure if the history changes, then I update the update panel. And then the last thing I need to do here is come in here and add a couple of history points. So essentially the history control is just it's a name value pair that you can go put in. It's a property bag. So whenever somebody clicks that do search button, then we put the text in there. And then whenever they page through, then what we want to do is as they're paging through, we want to stick that into the history state. And then the history control, if you noticed, it had a callback called navigate. So whenever the history control, whenever you come back into the page, if you come back from a history point, then this navigate method gets called, and it gives you a chance to essentially deserialize that state and get back to your known location. So what we do in here is get the state. This history event args contains the state that we stuck in there. And so we pull that out, and we set the pager back to the right place and the text in the text box back to the right place. So I'll save it this time and come back in here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and open this up in a brand new browser so I don't have anything on the back button state.
Hey Brad, when you pasted the snippet, Orcus did an extra content template for you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So where should I do that?
Search control and see that extra NG content.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you. It is very helpful to have the team. That looks better, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I have this update panel thing too, right? Yes. Okay. Very good. I had a little help creating the demo, so it's good. Okay. Now I shouldn't have any back button state. So I come back. Say I'm paging through here, and I do page 1, page 2, page 3, and now I can come back through here and just hit the back button, and it goes back from 3 back to 2, and then hit the back button again, and it goes back to 1. And I think the same thing is true here. If I say it's not going to work. Anyway, the same thing would work there if I didn't have another bug in here. So basically, what we do is we allow you to have a back button state, so you can programmatically change the state of the back button based on what's going on. This is a great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. So you can do anything you want with that back button state. So you could do on a timer, you could add new items to the back button state. So we do think that as a community, we need to dialogue a little bit about what the appropriate use of the back button is. And so as we've been playing with this feature, kind of where we're coming from is you should only add state to the back button state, history state, as in the response to an explicit user action. So in our case, it's an explicit user action to add things to the to page through or to do search results. So yeah, okay, so that's back button. The other state that I think is interesting is you can come in here and add a bunch of items to your playlist. So I'll come in here and add Fabricam, and then I'll add this butterfly and add bear, add lake, these really compelling videos. So I've invested a lot of time in this site now, and I'm playing this video, and notice kind of where I am. I'm kind of this far through the video. And say I did something like kind of close the browser. So all my state's gone, right? Like that state's gone. The boss came in, so I have to close the browser. But then the boss goes away, and like I just queued up those 4 videos I wanted to watch. Is there a way that I can get back to those? Because I don't even remember kind of what I was searching for. So we come back up to the site, and look, the video is playing kind of right where we left off, and the queue that we set up is right there. It's kind of queued up to be there. So what we've done is we've remembered the user state. The exact same thing works if I navigate away from here to MSN, so which I'm not connected to the internet, but if I navigate away and come back, the same thing. I get the playlist and the video back to exactly where I left off. So this takes what was a stateless thing on the web and gives me a more contextual, stateful experience. So the way we did that, that feature is actually using features as part of the ASP.NET AJAX release. Let me just show you how that was done. So I'll pop up in web config and give you a little web config tour here. What I did is used profiles, which I'm not seeing. Yes, okay. So what I did is use profiles. And what we do is you just specify the schema for profiles. This is an ASP.NET 2.0 feature. You just specify the schema, and then on the back end, we create a database for you that's user-specific. Each user that comes in gets their own version of the database, and we store that data in there. Now, of course, you can plug it up to a MySQL database or a SQL Server if you wanted to, but we handle that. There's no database access stuff you need to do. And then it's in default. And then in default, we have some client-side JavaScript that handles the case of the page navigating away. And good. So what we do is we actually write some client-side JavaScript such that when the page, when you navigate away from the page, we set that profile data via some asynchronous calls back up to the server. And what that does is without hanging the browser or anything, without any user perceptible action, we do calls back up to the server and it stores that data away. And then when we come back, we restore that state. So here are the 2 methods. We have save state, and you see I'm calling this ASP AJAX sys service profiles properties. And then look, I get a strongly typed access, timestamp, media URL, and then I call save on that. And when you call save, it does the asynchronous call to the server. And then I have a restore state when I come back in that I set the media URL and the start time based on the data in the profile store. So what I just showed you was a couple of ways to preserve state. I talked about the new ASP.NET history control and how you can manage the front, forward, and back button. And I talked about how you can use the profile store to actually store user state in a seamless kind of way. So that's about preserving user preferences. The next principle to talk about, I think it's the last one in this section, is enable sharing. The web is a fundamentally collaborative place. The first thing you want to do when you see a video that you like is send it off to your friends. When we were rehearsing last night, I think one of the techs had some very interesting videos that he was sending out to his friends. And so you want to provide a very easy way, very easy way to collaborate on that. So kind of a couple of interesting ways that I see people doing that on the web today is if you see this site, MySpace, it's a pretty common one, they devote like over half the page to different collaborative things to do with that video. You can share it via a bunch of different mechanisms. They give you the URL. They give you an object tag that you can go stick it in your page. Do it in a really collaborative way. The other one is I went up to a video blog site, and they have a bunch of different sharing options. They have a dig option. So the web is at its roots collaborative, and you have to make sure that your content is collaborative as well. So guess what we're going to do? Let's flip over to the demo, and we'll see kind of how we make this site a collaborative site. So I'll come up here and queue up Fabricam. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. I'll come up here and add Fabricam to the playlist. And I got to actually add Fabricam. So what I'll do is I'll add Fabricam to the playlist. Yes, there it is. And I'll say play now. So it's queuing up, play now, okay? And so while it's playing, I can click on this share video button, and you see we have all these different links that we can go do, share in a bunch of ways. Or we have this link that we can use, and I can take that and copy that on the clipboard and then send it to my buddies. Of course, my buddy runs a Mac, so can we queue up the Mac? My buddy runs a Mac, so if I send it over to him, then he needs to be able to view that on the Mac as well. So I'll just open up Firefox on the Mac, and then I actually bookmarked it over here, but it's the exact same video. And that's that URL that came from it. And you can see that I've created my site using Silverlight and ASP.NET, ASP.NET Ajax. All of it works ubiquitously, so wherever your friends are, you can share videos with them using our technology. And then because we've used this permalink kind of functionality, you can, any element of our site, you can actually say, give me a permalink for that, and pass it on to your friends, and they can share that content. Okay, so that's share. So can we flip back from the Mac? So that's the concept of enable sharing. And what we talked about there is how the web is fundamentally collaborative, and you need to provide ways to share content there. So we talked about some compelling ways to build rich user experiences. And now I want to ask Chris Knowlton to come up, and he's going to come up and talk about how some monetary side of this, how to deliver rich video without going broke. So Chris.
Thanks. All right. Well, let's start off with just talking about that a little bit. Obviously, if you want to get into streaming video, or you're still streaming video, and if you're doing it with Silverlight, then you want to do it as cost effectively as possible. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'll break it up into 3 sections. The first is why use Silverlight. That may be kind of obvious, but maybe not, so we'll talk about it a little bit. We'll talk about ways to stream or deliver that content yourself, and then we'll talk about various options for outsourcing it. So why use Silverlight? Well, we wanted to know the answer to this question too, and I'll start right off by saying I don't expect you to be able to read the graph, but I'll refer to it. We actually asked a company called RampRate, which is a sourcing advisors and strategic research company, to go out and do some research for us to find out whether or not the features we plan to deliver with Silverlight were actually going to provide what the market was looking for. And what they found at a base level was that you can probably see the colors on the chart. And the blue lines represent where Windows Media is doing well. And the brown lines represent where Flash is doing well. And you can see there are some areas where Windows Media is doing really well, like in DRM, live video, cost effectiveness. And there are areas where Flash is doing really well, like customizability and interactive features. And so this was obviously different people have different needs. And we found that, looking at the chart on the right, essentially what we found is that people in the coming year plan to keep spending on both Windows Media and Flash at about equal rates. And they obviously are investing for different reasons, depending on where their needs fall on this chart. Well, let's talk a little bit about how they're going to spend that money. one of the things that we found that was kind of interesting to us was they're planning on spending more money next year. That's not the interesting part. The really interesting part was the fact that when they spend that money, they're actually spending more money going forward per unit. So per user or per clip, you know, per asset essentially. They are going to be spending more money than they are just overall on their overall budget. So if their overall budget goes up, well then their spending per unit is going up even higher. And that surprised us because we thought, well look, you know, technology is getting better, codecs are getting more efficient, servers are getting more scalable. Why would their cost per unit be going up instead of down? And so it was interesting because then RampRate decided to look into that a little bit further, and the chart on the right shows flash video as a percentage of the total market. And what they found was that video traffic for flash is 23.5% of the market. What they found that surprised them was that the total cost of that ownership was 35.2%. So it's disproportionately higher. And when you look at why, you start looking at peeling back the layers. They're actually a premium that you're paying for streaming with flash or for delivering your content with flash. And so there are various layers that you peel away. And what you find is that you're actually paying a 77% premium to use flash to deliver your content. And so we looked at the reasons why, and some of those turned out to be the cost of staffing to create that content, the cost of your servers, because you need 60% more servers on average, the cost of the codec efficiency can affect your costs, and then also the fact that if you go out to a content distribution network, a CDN, they typically charge about twice as much for delivering that content with a flash streaming server. So what does that mean as far as what people are doing in the market? Well, in general, this bottom pie chart is trying to say, have you not gone into this area yet because costs are high or because the technology wasn't really delivering the features that you wanted? And the answer was yes. And basically, 56% of the folks said, we have foregone opportunities to get into this area because of these challenges. So then the question was, would you be willing to look at a solution that gave you the best of Windows Media today and the best of what Flash has to offer? And the answer was a definite yes. 39% said they would definitely go and look at something today that had that, and 53% said they probably would as well. So basically 90% of the people who were asked said, yes, I'm very interested in something like this. And so we actually asked people, were they familiar with Silverlight already? And at the time it was codenamed WPFE, and it had only been available for about 2 months. And the answer was kind of surprising, that 93% of those who had heard about it weren't sure if they would deploy it, but 6% were. But it gets more interesting as you break that down a little bit, because those who were already familiar with it, they'd already heard about it, they knew what the features were supposed to be. Of those, 19% said that they were definitely going to deploy it within the next year. Not even having seen it, they just heard about it. And of those who had actually gotten their hands on Silverlight, 61% said, I have tried this and I'm going to go deploy this in the next year. So that seemed like a pretty strong commendation for going to Silverlight as a Windows Media delivery platform. So we kind of covered that. So now let's talk about how you might actually deliver it yourself. The chart on the left represents fall-off rates when somebody's watching a piece of content on Microsoft.com for the last month. And what you'll see is that in general, people basically drop off the content after watching about 35%. Now Microsoft.com actually has some pretty sticky content if you think about it. Most of the content there is either how to do something that you need to do for creating your code or working with software. And the rest of it is usually stuff like in the gaming group, the Xbox content, which, once people start to watch a Halo trailer, they don't usually stop in the middle. So we have some pretty sticky content. And even so, 35% of the content is all that gets watched on average among all of our content. Now what's even more interesting though is that in general in the market, if you go to social networking sites or video sites, what you find is that rate of 35% drops to 20. Basically, you may provide or deliver a whole file to somebody, and they may only watch that first 20%. And so that bar, the graph on the right represents green is the watched stuff. The red stuff is what you've paid for that they didn't watch on average. That's not a good thing. So let's talk about different ways we can address that. First, if you have a web server and you're doing fire and forget downloads, that's where this bar graph comes into play. You're downloading as fast as that pipe will take it. That's, I don't know about you, it seems to me when I buy something, if I go buy a bottle of Diet Coke or something, if I only drink 20% and have to throw the rest away, I'm not very happy about it. So let's think about different ways we can address that. If we were to take our web server and put on bitrate throttling or some kind of bandwidth throttling, you could potentially drop it down for those social networking sites and all that have a cutoff rate of 20%. You may actually drop your cost of delivering that content down to that 20%. So you've just saved 80% on your delivery costs as far as raw throughput costs. Now let's look at what we're doing in IIS in an upcoming media pack that we announced at the National Association of Broadcasters last week, or 2 weeks ago. We're putting in a new bandwidth throttling module. We're providing that. As part of that media pack, you'll be able to go into it, and I'll show you what that looks like. Up at the top, you can see that you have a couple of choices. You can enable bandwidth throttling just across the board, no matter what your content is. Doesn't matter if it's a file, HTML file, a media file, graphics file, whatever. You can just say flat rate, this website is only going to deliver content at 700 kilobits per second, let's say. The other option that you have too is because not all media frame or all media files are always encoded at the same bit rate, you may not want to just set a flat rate. You may not want to say 700 kilobits per second if some of your content's at 700 kilobits per second, some's at 300 kilobits per second, because then you're still giving away bandwidth for free if people aren't watching all of that media content. So what you can do instead is you can choose your media types at the bottom, and they default currently to Windows Media Content Types. You can say that I want to allow the first 5 seconds of content to go down the pipe as fast as possible so I can fill that player's buffer. And typically that's set to 5 seconds. On Windows Media Player, for example, when you encode using Windows Media Encoder, the default buffering rate is, pre-roll buffer is 5 seconds. And then you can say once that first 5 seconds is down the pipe, I'm going to give them 100% of the bit rate, the detected bit rate. So it detects what the bit rate of that particular file is, and then it delivers the content at just that bit rate and not more. So you know they always have just enough, but never too much. So if they stop after 20%, using just any standard player, you've only delivered that much content. And using Silverlight, we've actually built it into the player, so if somebody hits stop, it actually stops downloading in the background, unlike some players. I mean, you may not know that. Sometimes if you hit stop, that HTTP download process is still running in the background and downloading the file until they go and actually click on the next file or pick some other piece of content. So another way to do it yourself is to use streaming server. And of course, my favorite is Windows Media Services. And you may ask, why should I stream? Why should I not just use my web server? Because I use it today. It's easy. It's simple. You've got bitrate throttling. What do I need a server for? A streaming server. Well, there are a couple of, well, more than a couple. There are a number of reasons you might want to use a streaming server. The first one is if you want to do any live events. Let's say you're doing television broadcast and you want to broadcast the news, or you've got a Madonna concert you want to cover, something like that. Then obviously you want to do live streaming, and a streaming server will provide that for you. And if you want to do fast streaming, that's within the Windows Media set of the Windows Media platform. Fast streaming refers to our technologies that allow you to click on a link and the content starts streaming almost immediately, right? So it's almost like channel change latency. You turn the channel on your TV. I don't know if you had the original like digital cable where you would turn, or click the channel button and you'd sit there and wait for 3 seconds while the screen refreshed. I hated that. But so we don't want that with our streaming either. We want to be able to hit that button or change that channel and boom, your channel starts. Your content starts playing. There's logging too. Some people are actually completely base their subscription-based businesses off Windows Media Logging. So if you have logging or you want logging so that you can actually record exactly who's watching the content based on their profiles or what portions of the content they're watching so that you can say, hey, I didn't do this part of the video very well because nobody's watching this part, and go change it and tweak it and make it better for next time, then logging is a great feature to use from the streaming media server. And then if you are also delivering content to the enterprise, another feature that we've added for Longhorn server is the caching and proxying functionality is built in. It's been, the APIs have been there since Windows Server 2003, but a lot of folks weren't very happy about having to build their own plugin. So we've built it for you using all of the feature set available. And that comes in the box. And so you can, if you have a broad network and you have a bunch of edge offices, branch offices around, and you're delivering content out to those, you don't want to serve that same stream 100 times over your WAN link out to that edge office. You want to serve it one time. If it's a live broadcast, it just splits off to your multiple users. And if it's cached content, on-demand content, you deliver it once, it caches locally. You have policy set so it can expire whenever you want it to. It always comes back to the origin server to make sure it's the most freshness content available, but then that content just always delivers locally until you tell it to expire or you put newer content up on your origin server. So that's a great way to save money and cut down on the need to upgrade your edge networks, your edge network links. So it kind of covered ways to do it yourself, using a web server with bitrate throttling, or using a streaming server. Let's look at a different way to do it. If perhaps you don't want to have all of the overhead, let's say, of maintaining servers, setting up servers, running servers, maybe you just want to hand that off to somebody else. Well, for the Windows Media Platform, we have a number of certified hosting providers and premier certified hosting providers. And what these folks have done is they've gotten tested by a third party as far as their ability to deliver content, deliver a certain bandwidth of content, like 8 gigabytes per second. And so they're always being tested once a year to make sure that they are meeting the requirements that we have for delivering content, so that you never look at a piece of content that's being delivered by one of these folks and go, man, my Windows Media Player stinks. Because you really want, you don't want poor bandwidth or issues on your content distribution network to be causing your content to look bad. And then, so the premier certified hosting providers, the thing for them is that they can provide higher amounts of throughput for really large events. Say NASA's launching a shuttle and you want to be able to make sure that everybody, all 340,000 people who are watching that, can actually get that content. And they also get tested more frequently. So that's one way. You can outsource to a CDN. Another way is to use peer-to-peer technology. And so one of the companies that we've been collaborating with is called Skinkers, and they're actually members here in the audience. I should have mentioned earlier, too, we have members from Ramp right here if you have questions about the study they're going to be releasing soon. So Skinkers is doing some very interesting things with peer-to-peer based on some technology that they developed and technology that Microsoft developed. It really merges the best of peer-to-peer with that television experience, that quick channel changing, that see it now, that be able to switch back and forth between multiple pieces of content very easily. It's great in the sense that it runs on Silverlight because now you can deliver that content to a Mac, to a PC. And I'm using Skinkers as an example because it either is, if you want somebody to deliver it for you, then Skinkers already has something in place. Or if you want to think about doing something like this, just see what some of the advantages are. And obviously, if you're using Windows Media content with Silverlight, you don't need to change your content at all. It can be delivered just as is. And Skinkers, if you can talk to them later as well, but they are rolling out content on BBC, on CNN, and other names soon to be announced. And if you're interested in working with them as far as testing out the new technology, you can sign up to be a beta tester on their website, or you can, if you're interested, actually talk to them about it being an early adopter as far as delivering your content with their new technology. Another way, too, that was announced earlier is the Silverlight streaming by Windows Live, and I think you probably heard Scott Guthrie talking about it at the keynote if you were there. Nice things for you is that you don't have to worry about servers. You just hand it off to somebody else, you upload your content, and you're done. Because it's using a content distribution network, just as we talked about earlier, 2 slides back, all of your content is always cached in edge servers worldwide, so it's never like it's just coming from Redmond, Washington. It's actually being delivered by a third party through servers that are all over the world. You do get 4 gigabytes of storage free, so unless you have a whole lot of content, you probably won't bump into that limit real fast. And of course, the best part is that it's free. As long as you keep your videos to 10 minutes or less, everything's free. So that's really, we've talked about here a number of different ways of looking at this. We've got the CDNs, the content hosting providers. We've got peer-to-peer with companies like Skinkers, and then we've got the Silverlight streaming. So we've talked about 3 different things here. One is why use Silverlight, and obviously there's some compelling both feature reasons and cost effectiveness reasons, your TCO. There are ways to do it. If you want to do it yourself, you can use a web server with throttling, or a streaming server. And if you want to outsource it, there are a number of solutions there too. Content distribution networks, peer-to-peer companies like Skinkers, and Silverlight streaming by Windows Live. So now I'll hand it back to Brad. If you have any questions for me, I'll be here after the show. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Chris. So that was all about how to save money. I get to come back up and talk about how to make money. So I got a couple of principles to go over. The first is about being found. I love playing hide and seek with my 1-year-old son. It's a lot of fun. He hides behind the chair in full view. But it is fun to play hide and seek with him. But it's not very much fun if your users have to play hide and seek with your content. How can your users find your content? Well, I think the number one way people find content is they search, and they might use this little search engine you might have heard of. But you can search for any random thing and find videos about that. Of course, that works in other search engines as well. So the question for you is, if you have data that's locked up in a database, how can you get it into Google's index? So if you have like metadata in a database and you need the search engine to find it, how can they find it? And luckily, all the big 3 search engines have agreed on this format called a sitemap. And what the sitemap does is it essentially gives the search engines a set of links that they can go follow to index your site. So this is particularly important with dynamically generated content like we have with Silverlight and Ajax. Let's flip back over to the demo, and I'll show you a little bit about how we do that solution here. I've created a sitemap here. Actually, let me show you the sitemap first. As part of the ASP Ajax Futures release, we have added a new section to config called sitemap. And essentially, all you do in here is say you want a new sitemap, and you're going to implement that sitemap in this class, and the target URL where you want to send users to will be this watch page. And then the implementation of that looks like, the implementation for that, you just specify a class. It says, here's the data I want in the sitemap for each entry, the ID, and in my case, the timestamp. And then I do a fun link query here where I get all the items out of my database, all the videos. I get their media definition file that Expression Media Encoder gave me, and that's an XML file. So I do a link over XML on that. And I pull each of the chapters out, each one of those chapter points in there. I pull those out, and I index each one of those separately so that I can send users, so I can send Google and then ultimately users to the exact right place. So the resulting site, that is dynamically generated. So whenever it's fresh, as soon as Google hits it or your search engine of choice hits it, they first get this site. What you do is you can go up to Google and you can register your sitemap, and it'll go to this place. And then Google will traverse that, and it'll go to this. And that's the site that was dynamically generated from the link query that I just showed you. And you can see this site has all those entries in it. And what the search engine will do is it'll come in here, and it'll grab each one of those, and it'll queue those up to be indexed by the search engine. And so notice that on the URL, we have both the ID of the video and a timestamp. Those are the 2 things we put in there. And so what we're doing down here is we actually queue up this video at that timestamp. And what you're seeing here is the text that's encoded in the closed captioning. That's included in the actual video, so you can't get at it. But what you can do is stick it on the page. So I stuck exactly the same text on that page by parsing the SMI file, the SMI file. That's what Windows Media Encoder uses to encode that text in there, the closed captioning text. And I stick that right on the page, which means it gets into Google's index, which means if you search for Marvin Martin or whatever and that exact text, it'll bring you to this video queued up to exactly the point where that text is said in the video. So that's a great way that users can find your content on the web. So that's about finding content, and that's part of the ASP Ajax Futures release that we just shipped at the show today. So that's about being found. Once you're found, though, how do you make money on that? Well, your ads need to be seen. They need to be relevant. They need to be seen, and they need to not be distracting from the overall content. So let's switch over to the site, and I'll show you how to do that part. So what I'll do is come back into that watch page that we were just looking at. And I'm going to add another media extender. So Steve Marks, one of the evangelism guys on our team, wrote this media extender, this media ad extender control. And what it does is it attaches itself to the this media control here. I better update that. It attaches itself to that media control, and it has, notice it has a web service, this ad web service. So it's going to go and I've set the interval to 3,500 milliseconds. Every interval, it'll go up and call the web service and bring down an ad to show. And it shows it to the user in what I think is a very cool kind of way. So I'll come and refresh this. And now it has the new ad extender in it. So now if we wait 350 milliseconds go by, the ad comes in. Notice, let me turn up the... Notice that the video keeps playing while the ads are showing. I'm showing them a little bit frequently for the demo purposes. You can configure it to where it makes sense for you. But as I'm watching that video, I don't get interrupted from watching the video, but I do get that ad impression. And what that does is it gives me a highly relevant, impactful impression that is good for your users and good for the sponsors of your site as well. So, with the base functionality we have with ASP.NET and with Silverlight, it's very easy to build extenders like this one. And I guess I can commit Steve to publishing this on his blog, the actual extender we used here, so you can actually go use exactly that extender if you want. So what I just talked about was how to be seen. And so we talked about a couple of monetization principles, making sure your content can be found and making sure those ads can be seen. So what I'd like to do now is invite James up from the Expression Media team. He's going to end us with a couple of very cool demos.
Thanks very much. I've got the fun task of being the last guy up, so I hope my demos work. Fingers crossed. Rather than talk too much about this user-generated content thing, I think we all have a good idea about it. I thought I'd just give us a couple of examples. I actually shot 2 little videos on my camera phone. One was back in Building 42. I believe it was on Saturday afternoon with Chris. I don't know where Chris is out back. She'll probably embarrass him slightly. And I also had the slightly embarrassing situation of sitting watching the keynote and seeing my product demonstrate a feature that I'm not most proud of, which is how to restart very fast. So as mitigation for this, I went and interviewed Wayne and recorded a little video that we're going to send back to the team to tell them what he thinks of them. So for the first video, what we're going to do is basically take the Silverlight TV example that we've been working with and show how we can solve a couple of the problems with user-generated content. As I mentioned, these videos I shot on my camera phone, and these are becoming incredibly ubiquitous and incredibly popular, but one of the big problems is they don't really use video that's easy to get out on the web in a good cross-platform way. So in this example right now, these are MPEG-4 files. Ah, that's a good idea, yeah. Okay, D. Much better. So here we are on Silverlight TV. We're clicking upload, and basically we're going to go and find the video, hopefully featuring the mighty Mr. Chris Knowlton on my desktop. So this is, as I mentioned, an MP4 video. We'll fill in the details, and we'll hit submit. Now what happens is the video is being uploaded, and we have a page called upload.aspx. And if we have a look at what happens in upload.aspx, we'll see a couple of things happen. Firstly, we receive the bits from the client. They get pushed up over HTTP. Secondly, what we do is we actually add a record to one of the database tables. And what we're doing is we're actually using a task management system to enable Expression Media Encoder to operate as a back-end service to do transcoding in the background. So that's all well and good. We've added it to our database. If we go and have a look and refresh the table, I think it's this one right here. What we will hopefully see is that a task has been added. So this is basically saying we've got a video, it's an MP4, we want to fire up expression mirror encoder in the background and process this. Now the interesting thing is that expression mirror encoder you may think is a GUI-based tool. We've seen it in the keynote this morning, we saw Brad show it earlier. It is indeed a GUI tool, but we also run nicely on the command line. So we have a very rich XML job format. And that combined with the command line allows us to go and party. Now, the only problem with that is, how do we actually talk to it in this scenario? We have a bunch of stuff in the database. The answer is pretty simple. We've got a service here called meme task worker. And this is basically, if we fire it up, you'll notice that in the database, currently this task is doing nothing. The task status is 0. It's sitting there waiting to do something. We'll come in and we'll just start this Windows service up. So again, like some of the other stuff, this is absolutely a sample we're going to publish. All the code that I'm going to show you right now is going to go up, including the next demo. So what happens is the service starts up. My laptop suddenly gets very busy because I'm doing everything on my laptop. Now, one of the great benefits of this database approach is that we can actually use multiple machines. So we can actually put a farm of boxes on the back end and get some really good scalability. So if I continue to refresh this, we're getting a little progress thing happening as the status comes back. Now, while it's doing that, I'll just talk about the API. Now, we mentioned XML and command line. To make it easier to consume our automation system, we have a little wrapper called meme proxy. This isn't actually built into the product. It's not an officially supported way of controlling the app, but it is something, again, we're going to release the source code for. We have full plans in Beyond V1 to expose a native automation model. But right now, you can see it's easy. You fire up a proxy instance. You hook up a couple of event handlers and a couple of global things like what the template is and where we're going to send it. And then down here, we're just adding a bunch of, we're adding a source and then setting a bunch of properties. Then basically, because of the event handlers, we get notifications. So basically what's happening in this service is it's using that automation model, it's doing the transcoding, and then the events notification come in saying the job is done. What happens then? Well, what hopefully happens then, again, if we come back to here, if we look in our other table, which is the items in the database, these are the ones that we've been looking at mostly today. If we now refresh, we should see, hopefully, a new item, and here it is, Chris. If we flip back to the web page and refresh, here is Chris. Now, the cool thing is, what has happened is we've taken our MP4 video from the camera phone and we've converted it into VC1, which is the standard Silverlight uses. It's a completely published standard. Not only that, we've also got a thumbnail out of the file, and we could have also done markers and other clever things. So if we just click on this, don't know if we're going to get any audio.
Tell me what Windows Media Services Hercules is.
So this is Chris.
That's all.
This is me going slightly mad and asking Chris his heritage in Microsoft, and he's been around a while in Microsoft. So there's our first somewhat dodgy bit of user-generated content. Let's look at our second example right now. So this one is a little bit more involved because it actually touches and has a whole bunch of different moving parts. What I want to do is take another camera phone video, and this time I want to put it on my blog. Now, we're faced with the same problem of we need to skin the thing, we need to transcode it. But also, if I want to put a piece of video on my blog, I've got an immediate issue, which is scalability. And Chris talked very eloquently to that earlier about using CDNs and other ways of doing this. What I'm going to show you in this example is actually how I've written a plugin for a blogging tool that I'm very fond of called Windows Live Writer. So we'll just call up Windows Live Writer. Thank you very much. Do we have some bloggers in the audience, by any chance? Okay, so here's Live Writer. Now, one of the really nice things about this is it has a great extensibility model. So people like me that like doing perverse things like writing plugins for blogging tools are able to come in and do things like what I'm about to do right now. So I'm going to click on this thing, insert Silverlight video. This launches my plugin, and the first thing is to pick the file. This is an even more dodgy video. Where is it? Feedback on EME. So there's the file. Next thing, we need to do some encoding on it, and basically we give a bunch of defaults in here. And you can also, if you wish, if you want to stitch something on the beginning, like a sort of here is my blog kind of video pre-roll thing, that's easy. We can also burn in a Creative Commons overlay. And then we want to pick a skin. So these are skins you may recognize. They're exactly the same skins that underpin the ASP media control and also the skins that we wrote in Expression Media Encoder. And you can see one of the nice things about the preview is it's completely interactive. This isn't a thumbnail. This is actually working, and I can even go in and like pause the video and stuff. So this is pretty nice. We'll pick the Silverlight one. So what's going to happen next is I need to actually send it somewhere. So part of the other interesting thing about this plugin is not just the transcoding, but at the end of the transcoding process, what it does is actually then upload it to the Windows Live Silverlight Live service, which is the CDN we've discussed from Microsoft. So we'll call this something. And actually, just as a quick aside, if we go in and have a look at silverlight.live.com, when you sign up, and by the way, I think looking at the numbers, we've had about 1,000 people sign up since this morning already on this. You basically go in, you create your account, you get up to 4 gig of basically space that is hosting your stuff. And not only that, it's also serving it up over a CDN. So it's pretty sweet. It's also nice because it isn't just focused on media scenarios. You can write any Silverlight application you may want, prop it up here. There's a great kind of UI for uploading, managing your applications, and so on. But they also have a programmatic way of doing things. So what I'm going to demo as kind of a part of hitting the insert key here, not only the transcoding automation, but also the automatic pushing of this video up to the CDN. So away we go. So while it's doing all of that, we're able to just carry on working. So this is message to Vex team. Vex is the code name for the encoder. Wayne was a bit distressed by our fast relaunch feature and would like to. So at this point, it's gone through, it's zipped the output, and it's uploading it, as you can see in the progress up there. I don't care about that. I'm just carrying on typing. Now it's finished. So at this point, the blog post is still in LiveWriter, but the video and the entire experience is now up on Silverlight. So that's the Chrome, the actual skin, and also the video itself. That can now all be delivered in theory. I say in theory. It's always crazy to try and do stuff on the internet when you're speaking at a conference, because invariably it'll go wrong on me. But there you go, whatever. So let's see if this works. I'm going to go to my blog. And I've been posting a few things I've been very excited about all our announcements. I've been posting a bunch of stuff live. So this is actually live. It isn't fake. And I am hopefully now going to hit publish. So as I say, the skin and the video are already propped up onto Silverlight streaming. All I'm doing now is merely putting the pointer up onto my blog. So hopefully we hit publish. And by the way, the team are actually going to see this. So this isn't fake. This is real. So hopefully, and I've been seeing some slight perf issues of this, so you'll have to bear with me. And you'll have to bear with the audio again. But basically, there is the video playing over the CDN live, hopefully playing. You can see a little buffering animation.
Yeah, I'm here with Wayne, and I just wanted to ask you a question, Wayne. Marvelous demo this morning in the keynote. Have you got any feedback for the Expression Media Encoder team?
Oh, well, thank you. I'd like to send this one bit of feedback. Thank you so much for providing an application you cracked in the keynote. Human really helped my presentation. Thanks, guys.
We'll make sure they hear that one, man. Thanks a lot.
So they've got it. It's out there for them to watch. And basically what he said was, thanks for putting in a feature that got a laugh, which was our product crashed. Wonderful. So that's it. A couple of demos. I did have one other. I think we're probably over time, so I don't think I'll do the last one. Or do you want me to do the last one? Yeah?
Should you do the last demo? Yeah.
Okay. This is where it starts to get crazy. Righty-ho. So one thing that I don't think you've seen yet that's part of the tool. So we've shown the tool in the context of designers. We've shown the tool in the context of automation, running as an engine under the covers. One of the things we haven't looked at is the fact that we actually have live encoding in this tool. Now, I'm very happy to say that our preview release went out today, and this is actually one feature not in the preview, but it is going to be in the final release. So if we go to live encoding, basically this is kind of live encoding 2.0 as far as Microsoft's concerned. And as such, we've put in a few nice little features. Basically, it can work with webcams. It can also work with DV cams. One of the really nice things, though, is the fact that we can have multiple sources. And I'm not going to demo that, but it does work, believe me. So I can go in and add another live source. The other thing that I can do, which I haven't been able to do before, is have file-based sources as well. So I can come in here and add a whole bunch of files. And these file-based sources can actually be in any format. They don't have to be in VC1. They can be in QuickTime or MPEG-4, any of the formats we support. And what happens is when we start streaming, on the fly, we can actually cut between the different cameras and between the different file sources. So if I'm a CEO doing a pitch and I want to insert a video in the middle, or if I'm doing a keynote and I want to put a video in, I can actually, in the encoder, basically transcode on the fly and output directly to the stream output. So we'll just set a couple of other things up. We don't want any metadata in this case. Now, again, a couple of things we can do with our stream. We can stream directly out of the back end of the machine, which is great. It's lightweight to set up. I've got a webcam and a laptop, and I'm good to go. But it's not very scalable. If I want to stream to a broad audience, such as the keynote this morning, I'm absolutely going to need a CDN or a Windows streaming server or a WMS server. So we can kind of do either of those things. We can also archive. So in fact, one of the things that you can do, which kind of ties it into the user-generated content theme, is you can actually not stream anywhere. You can just stream directly to your hard disk and use this as kind of a video sequencer where you talk and play videos back, and it creates a nice file for you. So let's see. What have I done wrong? Pick an audio source and hit start. And nothing happens, which is not good. So what should be happening is it should be streaming. And if it were to be streaming, it would be fantastic, because it would allow us to show, and I'm not even going to try and debug this, I'm just going to let it hang out there. But one of the really nice things about the Silverlight platform is that it gives us now a way of cross-platform streaming. So not only is it great with on-demand content, we saw some amazing examples of HD and kind of DVD-like experiences this morning. Not only that, but also you can take a live streaming source and connect to it. Not only that, but that works just as well on the Mac as it does on Windows. So that's the end. Thank you very much. Hopefully those were good.
Thank you. So just a couple other slides to wrap us up here. I have a couple other sessions you might want to go check out, and I'll put this slide up at the very end again. But I also encourage you to go to the hands-on labs. We have those on the ASP and AJAX stuff that I talked about, as well as Silverlight and, frankly, how to build a media player. So that should be a fun one. Some of the principles that I talked about are actually from Ask Tog as kind of another way to look at that. So that's a designer-centric site. If you want to kind of read more around that, you can check that out. And then there's some other sites to go to. And then I will point out the whole demo is live on the sandbox right now. So I did want to plug the Expression Blend instructor-led event that's going. They're doing a tour, so if you feel like you need to get toured up on that, there's some mechanisms to go do that. If you just go to the Expression website, you can get more information on this. So last thing I wanted to ask you is encourage you to fill out your evals. We'd love to have your feedback. We want to make this event better, and we'd all like to get better as speakers. Now that'll be the end, and if you have any questions, please come up. Thank you.